Good evening. Man, I'm so excited. How about you? Man, we are living in very exciting times. I mean, we can see what's happening, and we get a front row seat, don't we? So we should not have any fear, and we should be excited about what's happening. And I'm here to tell you how to take advantage of what's happening as well. How about that? Okay. So tonight, is number 3, and the whole mission here at Living Word for this program is to teach people how to become debt-free and financially independent in order to be an impact player for the kingdom. So our goal is to get wealth over with so you can go do what God's called you to do. Because you don't want to be sitting there enslaved to money, working for money, and you never have time or freedom to do what God's really called you to do. So we want financial freedom. How about you? So, it's interesting. 2019 survey said that 55% of Americans do not even save regularly for retirement. That's over half of our country. The richest country in the world. 51% don't even have an emergency savings account. 52% don't own life insurance. And 79% don't have an up-to-date will. 79%. 66% of people that die without a will. Okay? We're going to talk about that next month. So, as you know, we're working on building a strong financial house. And just like if you're going to build an actual physical house, the first thing you do is sit down with an architect and you draw up plans, right? And so, we talked about having, protection and legal and retirement. But tonight we're going to talk about investments, okay? And there's sure a lot of noise about investments, aren't there? And one of the first steps is you need to learn how money works. You have to know the fundamentals. And the sad thing is, if you're like me, I went to school and we didn't really have any financial classes. All we were taught was to go to school, get good grades, get a degree if you can, get a job with big benefits, and you'll be set, right? Okay? How's that deal working? And here we are in the richest country in the world, and half of our nation is not even saving for retirement. Now, last time we talked about the 4 ways to make money. We talked about the cash flow quadrant. Either you're employee, self-employed, business owner, or investor, okay? And tonight we're going to talk about being an investor because, again, in these quadrants, during your working years, you are working for money. Now, unless you want to work for money the rest of your life, you need to learn how to get money working for you. And that simply means that a percentage of your E income goes to investments. A percentage of your S income goes to investments. A percentage of your B income goes to investments. Now, we mentioned last time that there's only 3 ways to become financially independent. Just 3, not 4, not 5. Just 3. Isn't that great? It's that simple. And I summarized by calling them acres, shares, and people. And that just refers to real estate, stock, and business ownership. Okay? So now there's so many investment ideas out there. You hear it on the TV. You got cryptocurrencies, you got pet rocks, you got beanie babies, right? And everyone thinks they're investments. And here's the true test. Number 1 is ownership. If you own a house, you have a title. If you own a stock, you own the shares. If you own a business, you own the corporation. But if you live in a house that you're renting, you're a renter. If you put your money in the bank, you're renting your money to the bank, aren't you? And if you're an employee, you're renting your life to the business because they get the equity, not you. Okay? So ownership, you have a title. And here's the key, cash flow. Okay? Now, obviously, real estate, if it's your home, that's a negative cash flow. That's not an investment. As far as your retirement, yes, you should buy a home. That's a place to live. You need to buy a home ASAP. But if you have a rental property that gives you cash flow, now that becomes an investment. If you own stock in a business or large or small, that stock can produce cash flow and revenue. If you own a business, that produces cash flow. So people say, Mark, should I get this? Should I get that? Ask yourself a question. Do you own it, and do you get cash flow from it? Then you know it's an investment. So it produces cash flow, you have a title, and hopefully it grows in value. That's the key thing. And so if you understand those fundamentals, then all the noise that you hear on the radio, do this, do that, buy this, do that, just ask yourself, does it have a title? Does it produce cash flow? Does it go up in value? Some things might go up in value, but it doesn't produce cash flow. So then that's just a collectible, okay? Or a commodity. So tonight we want to focus on shares, stock. What is that? Well, most stock starts in a garage, okay? You think about Medtronic, right? We have a good local example. The great Earl Bakken started in his garage, inventing medical devices, right? Or you think about, even Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, they started in their garages, didn't they? Okay? And then what happens is, anybody like Shark Tank? Okay? And Shark Tank, what is that? That's somebody who started in their garage, developed a good idea, had a business that's generating revenue, but now they need to take it to the next level, so they need some money, don't they? Okay? And of course, a bank will not lend money on an idea or to a business owner. You have to have investors. So you present it to the Shark Tank or venture capital, and then they decide if they're going to invest money or not, don't they? And they only pick good investments, don't they? Even though it might be a cute idea, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't pass the test, they're not going to invest it. You should have the same litmus test, right? Okay? So then what happens is the Shark Tank investors, they invest in that small business, but then they want to scale it and get and take it worldwide, and then they have what's called an IPO, okay, initial public offering. In other words, they sell stock. Because even though the Shark Tank might be able to invest $1 million here, $200,000 there, a couple million there, they're not going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars that company wants to do, so that's why they sell stock. So then you, as an investor, have an opportunity for a very small price, for $25 or $50, to buy one share of that company. Might be 3M, might be Medtronic, et cetera, right? And so you can own great American companies, and all the employees and the CEO, the board of directors' job is to make sure that business grows, isn't it? And if it grows, what happens to your investment? Your investments grow, okay? So you want to get a ticket. You want to get on that. And see, most of us, again, I was never taught how to invest money. I just learned cool things like how to dissect a frog and how to dissect a worm, and that was fun to do, but they never taught me how to dissect a mutual fund, right? Or what a stock is, okay? And so normally, we know we're supposed to save money, so we take our money to an institution like a bank, insurance company, or credit union, and they pay us interest to use our money, which now it's pretty small, right? But what does the bank do with our money? Do they put it in the safe and keep it there? No. They have money managers who invest it into the economy. And they're making anywhere from 8, 10, 12%, 30%. You ever heard of a credit card? I know nobody here has a credit card, but you might have a friend that has one. Okay? Well, those are issued by banks, aren't they? And they can make 20, 25, 30% or more and give us one. Well, if you want to make a higher return on your money, then unless you're a money manager yourself, odds are it'd be better for you to hire a money manager for yourself. But most people don't have a couple $1,000,000 that would be required to hire your own money manager. So then what you can do is you can pool your money with other people, like a big co-op of investors. Everybody puts their money, might be $1,000, $100, or $100,000, but then there's a pool of money called a mutual fund, and then you can afford to hire professional money managers that manage your money 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And these are usually what your 401k provides, right? You can diversify into dozens and dozens of companies, because some will go up and some will go down, but they'll balance each other out. And it's also very marketable or liquid, because if you do need your money, you can get it out right away. Okay? And there's different types of funds. There's investments that will invest for future growth, those that will produce income because you've grown your assets now you want to get a monthly check, some that are aggressive for people that want to take some additional risk to go for higher gains, and some that are conservative for people that don't want to take as much risk. And then you can change your investments as your life changes. And so if you have a 401k or retirement plan through your employer, this is what you have, okay? But the sad thing is, do you know that statistically, from 1999 to 2019, okay, that the average investor only earned 3.9% of their money, okay? However, the U.S. stock market averaged 6% during that same time period, okay? And we went through some tough years throughout that time. So why, if investments did this, we only got this? It's because of our behavior. And so the first step for building a successful portfolio is you have to learn how to become a good investor. You have to understand investments, and you have to learn how to overcome your emotions, okay? Especially when the person that you hoped got elected didn't get elected, all right? And that happens every 4 to 8 years, doesn't it? Okay? And so, the sad thing is, what happens is, as you know, the market and the economy goes up and down, right? Okay? And people tend to invest when it's been good for a while, right? And they put their money in, and it goes up right away, and they think, oh my gosh, I'm a great investor, okay? This is awesome. And it starts going down a little bit, and they're like, well, I'm in for the long haul. You know, it's okay. It'll come back. It keeps on going down, down, down. It goes down below what they put in, and out of fear, they sell because they're afraid. And they thought, oh, I lost all my money. And then a couple years later, market turns around again, hits the bottom, comes back up. They don't go in because they're afraid it's going to go back down again. But pretty soon they're like, my gosh, I better get on the bandwagon. And they invest money. Sure enough, it goes up, it goes down, and they sell again. And they say, investing doesn't work. And do you know that the last 25 years, look at this is amazing, is if you just put your money in, you put $100,000 in, and you left it alone, 25 years later, you have $850,000. You averaged 8.97%. But if you missed the 10 best days out of all 25 years, then instead of 850, you have 392. So you average 5.6. If you missed the 30 best days out of 25 years, that's almost like one day a year that you took your money out because you're afraid, then you would only have 147,000, and your return was 1.56%. And then if you missed the 60 best days, you'd only have 46,000 out of your 100. You went backwards, didn't you? And here's the interesting thing. We went through 2020, didn't we? We're still kind of going through that, aren't we? Do you understand that 6 of the 30 best days in the last 25 years happened last year? 2020. So think about that. In the midst of chaos, 6 of the best days in the market, March 24th, it went up 9.4% in one day. March 13th, it went up 9.3% in one day. March 26th, up 6. March 17th, up 6. March 10th, 4.9. And March 2nd, 4.6. In fact, they were all in March. That's when everything happened. That's when people were running away. And so here's a rule of thumb. Whatever they say on TV, do the opposite. So if the world's going this way, you go that way. And if they come your way, then go the other way again, okay? Don't follow the masses. Don't follow the headlines. People watch the news. You think you're the only one watching the news? Just think about that. They're telling everybody, and if everyone listens, they're all doing the same thing. That's called the herd mentality. You know, I know an individual, I'll call his name Jack, that's not his real name, but about 5 years ago, the market was really volatile. He just couldn't hang on. He says, Mark, I just got to sell. I just got to go to cash and I'm just going to lose it all, right? And he did that, and 5 weeks later, of course, the market came back up, and everything, well, it looks like it's going to be okay. He lost $80,000 in 5 weeks because of what he did. The investment was fine, but his action cost him $80,000. And he did it twice in 10 years, okay? And that's why your returns are cut in half if you make emotional decisions based on the news, okay? So, you want to know what it takes to be an investor? Going to be tough, okay? You got to do the opposite of the masses and understand the rules of the game. If you don't like these rules, stay home, keep your money in the mattress, okay? But then you're still going to be working when you're 80 years old, all right? But here's the cool thing. If you know the rules of the game, then all you got to do is play by the rules. But if you don't know the rules, and here's the fun part. Most people don't know the rules. So you ever played a game with somebody that you've played many times? Okay, like with my son-in-law, okay? He's really good at games. He always say, well, let's play this. You know, let's play Settlers of Catan, right? We get creamed every time because he knows that game, right? He knows all the tricks, and does he teach us the secrets? No, right? Well, guess what? The money game's the same way. Between 1942 and 2020, here's the rules of the game. The market, on average, will go down minus 5% about 3 times each year, okay? 3 times a year, boom, minus 5. Okay? Isn't that interesting? Minus 10%. That happens about once every 16 months. Goes down minus 10%. Okay? People always ask me, hey, Mark, what's the market going to do? I know exactly what the market's going to do. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. Anybody know what an EKG is, right? EKG, this is good. That's bad, right? And see, after tonight, you understand that this is good. This is how you make the money because the masses are reacting in fear, and you guys are going to take advantage of that. And when it goes down 15%, it's every 3.25 years. So get ready. Have some money, boom, right? Minus in a 20% drawdown, about every 5.5 years. Okay? Now, does it stay down? No. See, everybody thought that when Trump got elected, the market's going to go down. The Democrats did, right? And then when Biden gets elected, all the Republicans think the market's going to go down. Guess what? You're all wrong, okay? Doesn't work that way. And just because things are volatile, you don't lose anything until you sell. And here's the funny thing, okay? People don't realize this. You have your 401k, and you want to sell your investments in the 401k. And that is not like you're taking your money out of the bank. Because the word sell has another side to it, doesn't it? What's that? A buyer. Do you realize that you cannot sell your investments unless someone buys it? Did you know that? So when your 401k drops to a 201k, like it did a few years ago, okay, and you want to take your money out, you understand if there's no buyers, you couldn't get it out. Did you know that? They don't have to give it to you because there's no buyers. So think about that for a minute. So if a seller is selling because they're panicking, why is a buyer buying? Because they understand that they're buying an asset that they own, that has cash flow, and that has growth. And if it was good yesterday for $100, it's better today at $50. Because even when McDonald's stock went down, did they sell 50% less Big Macs? No, they sold more because people were depressed. They ate more, didn't they? Okay, all right, okay. So if you can't sell your house unless you have a buyer. You can't sell your car unless you have a buyer. You can't sell your stock unless you have a buyer. Once you understand that, and you have the urge because you think, my gosh, it's going to go to zero. Well, if everyone thought that, there wouldn't be any buyers, and it would go to zero, by the way. But the fact that there's buyers should be a clue, okay? Because Wall Street, people think it's the casino. All it is buyers and sellers, buyers and sellers, buyers and sellers. It's not the casino. That's all chance, right? It's buyers and sellers, and they're buying businesses. They're trading 3M company. They're trading Medtronic company, right? They're trading Microsoft. They're trading Facebook. There might be companies that you don't like, but the money doesn't care, okay? All right? So, and I think in these times, politics is kind of overshadowing investing. And the key thing to remember is that politics and investments are two different sports. They're not the same sport. There's some correlation, but they're not directly correlated. In fact, if you go back to 1896, all right, 1896, and you put $10,000 in the Dow Jones. You hear about the Dow Jones on TV, right? Today, you'd have $7 million. 10,000, we were 7 million. Now, have we gone through some ups and downs since 1896? Two pandemics, right? Kennedy assassination, few world wars, depression, et cetera, et cetera. Now, do you understand that for Democrats, if you took your money out of stocks when there's a Republican president, and Republicans, you took your money out of stock because there was a Democrat president, okay? Both of you would have $1 million instead of 7. Okay? That's something. So if you're using in politics as a as a guideline for investing, you're going to be disappointed. Okay? And people think that politics is so bad nowadays. But, did you know that George Washington said, newspapers filled with all the invective that disappointment, ignorance of facts, and malicious falsehoods could invent to misrepresent my politics. So he was the first one that talked about fake news, okay? Thomas Jefferson, nothing can now be believed which is seen in a newspaper. Truth itself becomes suspicious by being put into that polluted vehicle. Okay? That's Thomas Jefferson. And you thought we couldn't get along? Anybody remember Vice President Aaron Burr that shot and killed the Secretary of State, Alexander Hamilton, on the front lawn? Can you imagine Vice President Kamala Harris having a duel in the front lawn and killing the Secretary of State? Things were pretty volatile, weren't they? Okay? So, hey, you know, it might be fun to watch, but if that puts fear in you so you don't invest, you're going to be disappointed. But Mark, what about the national debt? Oh my gosh, they just added another 1 trillion. You know, our grandkids, all this, right? And all that's true. And so people think the country's going to go bankrupt. Okay? Well, I'm not saying debt is good, but you got to put it in perspective. Okay? Because, you know, where are we at now? I'm losing count, 25 to 30 trillion in debt, give or take. But net worth means assets minus liabilities. Okay? That's your net worth. So if you have $1 million of assets and you have $20,000 of debt, then your net worth is $980,000. So even though this $20,000 might not be wise to have, are you worried about bankruptcy? Probably not, right? Well, do you understand the U.S. has the minimum assets of 200 trillion? Okay? So versus 25 trillion, it's a relatively small percentage. The United States owns 28% of the land. If they need some money, they could start selling some land. They have 119 trillion of oil reserves right now. They could just sell some of that and pay that down. 8.6 trillion of natural gas reserves, 22 trillion of coal. And the present value of future taxes by 2066 is $22 trillion a year just in taxes, based on the GDP growth. So you know what? That's not an excuse for you not to invest. Yes, we should be concerned about it. Yes, we don't want to add any more. But if that's what's got you keeping your money in the mattress, you should find another reason. Okay? And then you think about America and technology. We live in the greatest country in the world, don't we? And things are constantly being developed, and new things are coming out, and all the technology, and I don't even understand all the things going on. In fact, all I got to do is ask my 15-year-old, and he can explain it to me, right? Okay. But look at this. In 1878, that's when the telephone was invented. It took 91 years before 80% of the population had a telephone. Almost 100 years. Isn't that crazy? In 1903, cars were invented. It took 67 years till 1968 to have 80% of U.S. households that had a car. Cell phone was invented in 1984. I had my first one in a briefcase. Remember that? With the big battery? Okay. And it took 25 years since 1984 for 80% to have a cell phone. And then the smartphone came out in 2007. It only took 10 years. So you see how things are accelerating? And now your cell phone is more powerful than all the computers in NASA that put the Apollo missions in orbit. And we don't think anything of it. Well, all that stuff creates prosperity and opportunity. But Mark, this time is different. This time is different. Well, let's see what the word. Let's go to Ecclesiastes 11. Ecclesiastes is a great book on investing, okay, if you didn't know that. And we'll start with 11 and verse 1. It says, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you'll find it after many days." You know, in some footnotes say, take a risk. You know, nowadays it's kind of, you know, the new thing to say, be safe, be safe, be safe. It's like I wasn't going to jump off the bridge after we talked, okay? Now, I understand it's for health and all that kind of stuff. But you know what? How about we say, take a risk? Cast your bread upon the waters. Go for it. Test God. Even like in Malachi for tithing. Test God. Prove me wrong. Right? And give your portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what disaster may happen on earth. So, I mean, disasters can happen, can't they? That's called diversification. That's why you spread your investments out to 7 or 8 different places. Have a diversified portfolio. You don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Mark, what about Bitcoin? What about it? That's another seminar. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves on the earth. If a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it will lie. In other words, it is what it is, right? Don't try to change things you can't change. You can't change the rain. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. Hey, market, the market's too high to invest. Got to wait for it to drop. Then it goes down. What's going to drop more? As you do not know the way the Spirit comes to the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work of God who makes everything. Everything. Right? So in the morning, sow your seed. And in the evening, withhold not your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, this or that, or whether both alike will be good. You're going to have some investments that do well and some that don't. And don't let the some that don't prevent you from doing the others that do. See, our job is to control what we can control. We're supposed to sow, right? Don't worry about the wind. Don't worry about the politics, right? In 2 years, it's going to change, okay? And then 2 years again, it's going to change again. 2 years after, it's going to change again. And that's the way it is. It's not going to change, right? And I love verse 10 from chapter 11. It says, remove vexation from your heart, or don't worry. Cast out anxiety. We're just not supposed to worry about stuff. And see, if you worry, fear, false evidence appearing real, then you're never going to sow, and then you're never going to reap, are you? Okay? So when you understand what an investment is, when you understand that, hey, this is the way it is. I love Genesis. What is it? Genesis 8, 22. And it says, Genesis 8:22, while the earth remains. Is the earth here? It's here. Seed time and harvest. Sowing and reaping. Cold and heat. We know that in Minnesota. Summer and winter. Day and night shall not cease. So what are you worried about? That's our promise, right? So when it rains, you don't have to worry about building another ark, unless God told you to, right? Because this is God's promise, isn't it? Shall not cease. Christians should be the best investors of anybody. You know why? Because we know the world only ends once. Not 5 times a year, not once every 3¼ years, not once every 16 months. The world only ends once, and that's not a financial decision. So you shouldn't be managing your finances towards doomsday. You should be managing your spiritual health, shouldn't you? Right? It's a whole different ball game. So then, if you understand that, there's a concept called dollar cost averaging, where if you invest every month and you never look or consider the market. So for example, if you have 2 people and one person starts investing, the market goes up, and they're putting $200 a month in here, and it starts at $8 a share and it ends at 18, and you think, wow, that's a great investment. I bought it and it went up, right? Meanwhile, investor B over here also invested $200 a month. It started at $8 a share, but once you know, it went down to 2. As soon as I invest, it goes down, right? And then it finally came back up to 8, so it never got above 2. So you would think that investor A would have more money, but it doesn't work that way, because every month that investor A is buying, the shares are getting more expensive, aren't they? So you're buying fewer and fewer shares. This investor, even though it's going down, they're getting more shares, and at the end, investor A has 100 shares, and even though it's 100 shares times $18, it's only $1,800, right? Where this individual has 300 shares, and even though it's only worth $8, they have $2,400. So if you understand this, then when the market goes down, you get excited. You're like, yes, the market went down. It's on sale. Why do you like to buy your socks on sale, but you don't want to buy your stocks on sale, right? So again, you have to think the opposite of the masses. And the good news is, even though this is, does everybody kind of know you should buy low and sell high? Have you heard that before? Guess what? Nobody does it. Nobody does it. I should say nobody. The smart money does it, but the other money doesn't. Don't be part of the other, be part of the smart. So you should be buying when they're selling, and you should be selling when they're buying, right? Or actually, you just hold on. And see, in Luke 19, verse 20, this is about the talents, right? So in verse 20, it said, and this is the guy who took his and buried it, right? And he said, then another came saying, Lord, here is your mina, which I have kept laid away in a handkerchief in my mattress, in my money market account, in my checking account. For I was afraid of you. I was afraid. Because you are a severe man. You take what you did not deposit, you reap what you did not sow. He said to them, I condemn you with your own words, you wicked servant. That's not very nice. It's not very compassionate. Tell this guy who didn't make anything and you call him wicked. You knew that I was a severe man, taking what I did not deposit, reaping what I did not sow. Why then did you not put my money in the bank that I might collect it with some interest at least, right? And then to make matters worse, right? Here he called him wicked. And then he said to those who stood by, take the mina from him and give it to the guy who's got 10. Okay, that's not supposed to go the other way. Take from the rich guy, give to the poor guy, right? No, he took from the poor guy, gave to the rich guy. That's not very compassionate, right? So you want to be the good investor. You want to be the good steward, right? And see, here's the thing. Back up a little bit in Luke 19 and verse 13. Everyone, if you're like me, I believe we're in the last days, right? Okay? I hope it comes tonight. I'm ready to go. How about you? And if you're not, we have a little altar call tonight. You'll be ready tonight, okay? Okay. And I kind of recommend that, that's it. I'll leave that to the pastor. But in the meantime, that doesn't mean that we can be a fool, blow our money and not do anything, and why say for retirement, it's not going to happen? No. Jesus, it says right here, engage in business till I come. Some versions say occupy till I come. That's what we're supposed to do, engage in business. Growing our wealth, right? Being an impact player for the kingdom. The best way to help the poor, don't be one. How about that? Because you can't help a poor person if you're poor, right? So take advantage of that. And the magic of compound interest, we talked a little bit about that last time, but it's just amazing. I think about this guy, Mike, and back in 1975, he put 25 grand into one fund, and he was 30 years old. 26 years later, he hit $1 million. That's it. And he didn't even add, didn't take it out. And now it's actually grown to $4.5 million after he gave 500 grand to his church to pay off their mortgage. Okay? And then this gal, Vicky, she put $1,000 started. She did $200 a month for 30 years. She's got $750 today. $750 grand for $200 a month. That's $50 a week, right? That's only $10 a day. Take the weekends off, right? That's a latte a day. See, you can do this stuff. And you might be older and say, man, I'm too old. I'm in my 50s and my 60s. Here's a makeup plan for you. You put 10 grand in a good growth mutual fund and do $2,000 a month because you get to make up time, right? So figure that out. And many people have done that. They put their spouse's income. In 10 years, you got 600 grand. 10 years. And I know tons of people that have done this, the makeup plan. Or if a few people have invested their spouse's income and were able to save $4,000 a month, $1.2 million in 10 years. See, it doesn't take long. And again, if you're 60 years old, you're only halfway there, okay, due to new life expectancy tables. We're going to have one of the greatest years. You better hitch a ride. Do you understand that the average economist is predicting a 7.7% return this year in the market? And the GDP is growing 6% or better? I'm telling you, things are awesome. Stop watching TV, okay? All right? Stay focused. We're going to have to wrap up here because we want to have some time for Q&A. And, in the handout, if you didn't get it, you can either pick it up or you can download it off the website. And it talks about, the 8 steps of investments. And so, go through that. Create an emergency fund. That's your first step. And you don't have to be safe to succeed. You gotta risk. And risk just means you gotta have a little volatility in your life, right? Diversify. Automate your investments on a monthly basis. Reduce taxes by using your 401k plan. Beware of hot tips, right? Hot stock tips. I got a tip, right? Okay, I'll tip you over. That one guy that put $200,000 in GameStop, borrowed money and lost it all. Okay? Now, a lot of people made money. Congratulations. But a lot of people lost money. Okay? Stick to things where everyone makes money. Have a plan, stick to it, and seek professional advice. I don't know if you heard the story about the flood in a Christian. And, the flood was coming. Mississippi was rising. So the sheriff came in his SUV, knocked on the door and said, hey, you got to come. The flood's coming. He says, no, I'm good. I'm a born-again Christian. I pray God's going to take care of me. Sure enough, the water gets up to the second story, and a boat comes by, and they shout to the Christian in the second floor and say, hey, get in the boat. The flood's coming. You're going to drown. No, God's going to take care of me. Sure enough, the flood gets up to the roof. The Christian's on top of the roof. Helicopter comes, drops the line, says, get in. You're going to die. No, God's going to take care of me. Sure enough, the guy drowns, goes to heaven. He's a little bit miffed with God. He says, God, I can't believe it. Here I was standing in faith, praying in tongues, believing that you're going to save me, and you let me die. He says, well, silly, I sent you an SUV, a boat, and a helicopter, right? So the question for you tonight is this your SUV? Is this your boat? Or is this the helicopter? Don't wait beyond that. So thank you for allowing me to share tonight. It was a pleasure. Let's bring the pastor up here, and I think we got some questions. All right.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was awesome. Just so much information, and we're so glad to have had you here. We do have a couple questions that came in. And so just to kind of start us off, I thought I'd start with kind of a relative to our moment here, which is we are coming into a time where we've got tax returns and stimulus checks coming. And so we had some folks who were wondering, if they don't need that stimulus check for their, home, the home building that you're referring to earlier, what should they do with it?
Great question.
Yeah.
Well, probably, and I know it's been kind of a depressing time, so it'd be very tempting to go do some retail therapy, and spend it all and give it to the Mall of America, but probably wouldn't recommend that. I'd say the first thing would be to, if you don't have an emergency fund your emergency fund. And if you do have an emergency fund, you got some debt, pay down some debt. If you don't have any debt, then invest it in your 401k plan or maybe a Roth IRA so you can grow tax-free.
Okay, thank you. So just the next question kind of was going back to when you were speaking of emotional buying. And for somebody that might tend to lean that way, or maybe they find themselves being an impulsive buyer, what would be some indicators that would say to that person, hey, you're about to emotional buy here, maybe something that would alert them, kind of, what would be an indicator, in your opinion, for somebody that is often in that position? Does that make sense?
You mean just by buying stuff?
Right. And just kind of like, in that moment, you might find yourself unaware that you are emotional buying.
Sure.
What would be an alert or something for that individual to be paying attention to?
Yeah, well, depending on how expensive it is, but if it's an expensive item, you might want to maybe delay your decision for a day. Think about it. And then make sure that you have your emergency fund in place and your debt's paid off. And if your other goals are in place, sure, have fun. That's what it's for, right? And so I think that's why having a plan is so important, because if you know your retirement's handled, this is handled, that's handled, if you got some extra money and you want to reward yourself, there's no sin against that. But you just don't want that purchase to blow up your long-term plan.
Okay, love that. Thank you. The next question was, would you recommend apps like Robinhood for investing? Or maybe that could be a little bit more broader if you have any recommended tools in the way of apps when it comes to investing.
That's kind of a very specific thing.
Sure.
So I probably don't have a real good recommendation. But I think just becoming financially literate. I do have a good book list, recommended book list in the handout at the end. Dave Ramsey, for example, has some great books. His website has some great tools. So I think maybe doing some of those types of things might be better. Having an investing app without investing knowledge, you're going to do silly things that you're going to lose money on. So you shouldn't invest in anything that you can't explain to somebody else. If you can't explain it, you shouldn't put money into it.
Very practically put, and that someone like me, that really helps me to just have this really straightforward answer.
Yeah.
And this, if you don't have this, then you shouldn't do it. That kind of thing, I think, really does help people, especially my age.
Yep.
So, another question that we had come in is, is long-term investing the best way to hedge funds in a bear market?
Yes, if you have a long-term perspective, because then you know that this too shall pass. And so you might go through those tough times like we talked about, those down markets. And I think if you understand investing, you'll change your attitude and actually get excited about that. And if anything, you want to try to find ways to put more money in when it's down. It's kind of like your real estate. If homes in your area all of a sudden dropped and you had the money, would you buy that home because you know it's going to go back up again?
Yep, absolutely.
Buy low, sell high.
That's it. That's it. That's right. I love that. This question just came in. What are your thoughts on e-commerce businesses?
E-commerce businesses.
Yeah, and that was it. That was all that was offered.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, maybe.
I don't know if that means starting an e-commerce business. Sure, starting a business is great. Buying stock in the e-commerce business, if that's the question. Again, whatever you buy, make sure it has cash flow, right? Has revenue, because it's amazing how people will buy. Back in the late 90s, there was called the tech bubble. And what that was is all these tech companies their stock was going way high, even though the companies didn't even make a profit. And a lot of people are doing it. They buy investments because they're popular, but the company doesn't even make any profits. So stick to fundamentals. You only want to buy investment that has profitable cash flow, and otherwise you're just chasing trends, and you don't want to do that. And that's what the herd does, by the way. So don't be part of the herd.
That's right. Yeah, thank you. Another question came in here. I know we're wrapping up here in time, but is there a good resource for the best IRA funds to invest in? Again, another resource question.
Yeah, I guess it depends on, where you're looking, because if it's, for example, within your 401k plan, you only have a certain number of choices. And usually the funds in there are pre-selected, so they have to be pretty decent. And the thing is, too, you're never going to find the best one. And as soon as you do, then next year the other one's going to beat them. The same team doesn't beat the Super Bowls. So the key is find a fund that has a good long-term track record, and they've always done pretty well. No, they're maybe not the best, but they're a lot better than putting your money in the mattress. And then over time, you'll learn how investments work. And I think, too, having a professional advisor helping you make that decision is good as well,
Absolutely.
So.
Well, Mark, I believe that wraps up our time. So thank you for taking the time to answer our questions.
All right.
And thank you for being here. You guys,
All right.
please give Mark a round of applause here. And thank him for being with us.